What better way to start the year than doing a bit of recapping? I don't know about you, but I find it quite therapeutic. So we have another Amiga here. Not one that we've recapped on the channel before. Rather, this is a CD32. I have done one many years ago. In fact, it was the first ever recapping project I ever undertook. Yes, I stupidly tried to do that on my own CD32, but we'll just leave the lid on that machine and never speak about it again. It does work. We'll just leave it at that. This one though, this belongs to Goldfish on Games. He sent it in along with this lovely little magnet that I'll stick to the front of my EATX 2000. So let's get the shields off it and let's see what we're facing. Without doubt, the CD32 has to be my favourite Amiga for playing games. I think the Wii console just fits it perfectly. Okay, maybe not all games, especially the likes of simulators or things like that that need the keyboard. But for your action games, your platformers, beat 'em ups, all that sort of stuff, the CD32 really hard to beat in my opinion. Especially if you add one of the TF accelerators to the expansion here, with the riser card, and then the accelerator would sit here over the top of that shielding, be it the 328, the 330, or indeed the 360. Yeah, CD32, you will not find a better Amiga for playing games on. Unfortunately though, like most Amigas, these things are getting quite expensive. And in terms of recapping, probably one of the more expensive Amigas to recap, because look at the amount of capacitors on this. Commodore were certainly not holding back, but they did make a mistake. These two caps here, on some CD32s, they have been put in backwards, and on this one, yep, they are backwards. And I do say some, I know some people think that it's all CD32s, but it's not. My CD32, my own one, had these in the correct orientation. And that correct orientation is with the negative legs pointing towards the switch. These two have been installed backwards, and as you can probably tell, they have bulged quite a bit. But I suppose it has been the guts of 30 years, so what else would you expect? That capacitor there, look at that. How would that have happened? The top of that capacitor has been indented by something. That's weird. Not that it matters, because we're going to be replacing them all anyway. So we do need to get this out of the bottom shield. But on the RCA jacks here, there are these tabs around each of the jacks. Those are holding the bottom shield in place. So we need to try and bend them out. Easier said than done, of course. The easiest way to do this might be to go in from behind. Yeah, that seems to be working. Although we'll need to get something thinner to get into the sides. The wee screwdriver might have more luck. And don't worry, we will be bending this all back into shape, but I think that's it free now. There we are. But just before we do put this away, I'll just grab the pliers and we'll just bend all them back again. Oh, and I've managed to cut myself. Okay, that'll do. When we put the board back in this, when we're finished then, the jacks going through there, we'll just spread those back out again. So just before we do jump in and remove all the old capacitors, this board is quite dirty, isn't it? So I think we'll give it a clean, and I'll go and find a plaster. That's better, but to clean this, all I'm going to do for now is just give it a quick dusting over with the toothbrush. We'll give it a proper clean when we're finished. Right, that'll do for now. So where do we start? How about we get the 3 through-hole capacitors, get them off first. And I'm just going to take the lazy approach. So we'll add some fresh solder to these points. And then we'll try and walk the old capacitor out. With that leg out, Come on. And there we are. Another one out. And the last one I think is here. Must be a massive grind on this or something. There we are. And would you look at that? I don't remember this from when I did my CD32, but it looks as if there's an option here to fit surface mount capacitors rather than through hole. There's the points from which that capacitor there came away, the through hole one, but there's pads there and there. Let's just buzz them out with the multimeter here. So from that point there, do we have continuity? Yeah, we do. Continuity to there. And from that one, we have it to there. So we could fit a surface mount capacitor. And there's another thing that's interesting actually, isn't it? The positive symbol there, denoting where the positive side of the through hole cap should go, well, that's incorrect. That is as these were installed, like that. But as we know, that side there is actually the ground. But if you take the footprint of the surface mount cap, this side here with a straight edge, that would be the ground. And so that is correct. If Commodore had to fit large surface mount caps there, as they are 10 volt, 1000 microfarad, if Commodore had fitted the surface mount caps, well, odds on they would have fitted them the correct way around. Is it the same for this one? Yep. As rather than fitting a new through hole cap, we could fit a couple of those. I might do that. In fact, I think I will do that. Unless, of course, anybody knows of any reason why I shouldn't do that. In which case, please let me know. So I'll just drop a bit of solder onto one pod. I think I can just do this with the capacitor in my fingers due to the size of these things. Try and get it orientated there. And we'll melt that solder and slide this thing into place. There we go. It does very much fill the pads, but if I can get a spot of solder onto that other side, I'm sure it'll be okay. We have a flux there, might just help that. And just to tidy up the other side, let's just drop a little bit of flux on that as well. There we are. Do this other one. Just much in the same way. Looks like I accidentally blocked a couple of vias there, but that won't do any harm. So that's those two done. And I fitted another one here where the other through hole cap was, but also just replaced that one as it was easy to do that while this was off. 1, 2, 3, 4 done, but lots more yet to do. So let's change some caps. The method I'm going to use today for removing the old caps, well, it's not going to be my usual hot air approach. Rather, I got a second soldering iron at Christmas there, or should I say my wife bought me it for Christmas. So I'm going to try and use the 2 iron approach. Nice and simple, and saves any mucking about with air and all that captain tape. There's another instance there where the silk screen sort of indicates that you could have through-hole capacitors, and there are 2 holes there, although they're currently filled. Out of interest though, are those ones marked right? Yeah, they are marked correctly. Where the positive symbol is marked there for the through-hole cap, that is indeed the positive leg. That's all the 100s done. We'll do the 47s next. That's all the 47s. We'll do the 22s next. Just working my way down through the capacitance figures. I'm trying to be careful that we don't miss anything. Next up then will be the 10s. Quite hard to get into the back of that one. And to be honest with you, out of all the capacitors we have done so far, that is the only one which I think has leaked. This pad at the front here, it is a little bit green. All the rest of them though have been nice and silver. I can't really get any fresh solder to take to this, but let's just see how we get on. There we are, came off okay. After a quick clean up though, there is no further signs of any corrosion. And it certainly hasn't made its way onto any of the surrounding components. I'm going to have to change the tip of my iron to do that one. We'll come back to that one. I can't get this tip in. I've changed to a pointy tip on this iron. That should get in there now. Not a fan of this type of tip though. Don't really like soldering with it. Just the 4.7s then to do. There's another one there actually that's a little green just in front of it. So that would be 2 capacitors in total that have evidence of having leaked. And that's not me suggesting in any way that this didn't need done. This did need done. These caps are renowned for giving problems. And yeah, that's the first one actually. I'm getting that telltale whiff, that fishy smell of the spilt electrolytic. And you know what? I think that's us done. So our board does need a good clean, but before we do that, how about a quick tour? Because it's not every day you find yourself inside Commodore's little console. So the CD32 is based around the AGA chipset, same as the Amiga 1200 or the 4000. And this machine does share quite a bit in common with the 1200, in that it's got the Motorola 68EC020 processor clocked at 14 MHz. It has the 2 megabytes of chip RAM, and then I suppose the AGA chipset itself, Alice and Lisa. Paula is in there as well, but she remains the same as has always been on any Amiga. The other large custom then is this one, the Akiko chip, and this is bespoke to the CD32. This chip handles the I/O functions, the CD interface, but also provides chunky to planar graphics conversion. The whole idea of that being that it could help run those Doom type games that were becoming ever so popular around the time of this machine's launch. But unfortunately, Akiko doesn't quite get there. Yes, it definitely does help on stock CD32, but by the time you stick your riser card in there and say your TF330, well, the processor itself is just as fast, if not faster, at doing those conversions. Sitting here then, we have the Kickstart ROM, 3.1 ROM in this machine. And would I be right in saying that the CD32 is the only Commodore Amiga that shipped with a 3.1 ROM? I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think it might have been. 3.1 ROMs definitely did ship in Amiga 1200s, but by that point it was under the SCOM brand. Although this is an extended ROM, this obviously has that CD32 splash screen built into it. On the other side of the board then we have the video DAC and the video encoder. That's the audio DAC, the Sanyo LC78835M. And I discovered something that I thought was interesting anyway about the CD32 lately. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Sony PlayStation. And you may be aware that within certain circles, the original PlayStation, well, it is classed as a very good audio CD player, and that's because of the high quality DAC that it has within it. The DAC in a PlayStation 1, well, it's 16-bit and has a signal to noise ratio of between 85 and 90 decibels. But did you know that our Sanyo DAC here in the CD32, well, it's an 18-bit DAC and has a better signal to noise ratio of 96 decibels. CD32 audiophile hardware confirmed. Make sure everyone adds at least £100 to their eBay listings when they're selling these machines. That is just a little joke. We then have the usual array of ports with the addition of a keyboard port and S-Video. The S-Video output from this machine is fantastic. It is very close to the quality you'll get from RGB. And then the other thing that I think is somewhat interesting is this power switch. Now, what could possibly be interesting about a power switch, I hear you say? Well, if you're familiar with a Commodore 64, and in fact, actually, let me just grab one quickly. There is a Commodore 64. There's its power switch. It is exactly the same as what's on the CD32. And in fact, the CD32's power supply itself, it is the same as the power supply on the Commodore 64's external disk drive, the 1541 Mark II. And for one other little piece of trivia, well, here is the power supply for my CD32. Well, if we just flip to the underside of it, well, you can see on this label, PSU C65. So was this PSU perhaps once intended to power that mythical computer? Did Commodore have a stock of spare switches, and that's why that was used on the CD32? Both very good questions, both possibly very pointless questions. If anyone knows, please let me know. For cleaning the board then, I was intending to show off my new ultrasonic cleaner, but unfortunately when I removed it out of the box, a couple of screws fell out of the bottom of it. There's definitely something loose inside it, so I'm afraid that's going to have to go back to AliExpress. And to give this thing a clean, well, we're just going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. It's going to have to be IPA and cotton buds. It never really does the best job doing this like this, so I think, to be honest, all I'll do is just go around all the points that I have soldered just to try and mop up any flux that I can. The board is a little dusty still, but sure, once it's back inside the case, you'll never know any better. I suppose one advantage to cleaning up with the cotton buds is that it also gives you another opportunity to scrutinize your work again. And this cap here, I haven't put it on particularly straight, and I can see the pad of it here, or the leg of it here at the back. It isn't particularly well attached to that pad. It is sort of hanging off to the side of it. Now, it is soldered on and it probably would be okay, but I'm not happy with it like that, so let's just take it off and straighten it. I didn't think I'd be recapping my recap today, and just because that cap has now been exposed to heat a couple of times, it probably would be okay, but I'm just going to replace it. I do have plenty of these, so why not? That's better orientated now. Yeah, that's much better. So I'll just clean up around this one again, and then I suppose we should test it. Cleaned up not too bad. I did give the whole thing just a very quick going over. I think it has came up pretty well, considering it was just the cotton buds. But does it work? So power's hooked up, got a joypad hooked up, audio's hooked up, and I thought, why not? Let's just take the video from the S-Video port, give you a look at just how good that actually is. Nothing but pure Commodore cheese. Does seem to be working fine though. Obviously I don't have the CD drive. Goldfish didn't send the CD drive, and it's a bit of a shame he didn't actually, because there are a few capacitors in that which probably also should be changed. Well, we can go into the language select menu. Can I remember how to do all the various bits and pieces in this? And of course, yes, we have to suffer the cheese every time we go in or out of a menu. There are all his save games. I want to be sure we don't delete anything here, so we'll just come out of that. It's fun the first time. You have to acknowledge it the second time, but I think the third time onwards it does tend to get a little bit annoying. How are we going to make this do something? I suppose we could lift the CD drive off my CD32, couldn't we? Although that is in itself a bit of a pain in the backside to do. I know what we'll do. We'll get the riser card off mine and the TF330 and get it to boot that way. So this will go on here. I will have to just hold it up here because it usually relies on the RF shielding. It sits on top of that. There's little feet here on the bottom of it. But let's see if it boots. Yep. Drive activity. I think it's booting fine. And there is Xbench. That's the launcher I use on my CD32. That is a little loud, just let me turn that down. We'll be trying and run something. How about a bit of my favourite demo, Enigma? And I think you'll agree with me that that S-video picture is really sharp. Definitely far better than the composite video. Very close to what you'll get from the RGB. Well, there it is, back in the RF shielding, ready to go back home. The CD32 actually is one Amiga that's really fussy when it comes to the RF shielding. It needs it, or it really struggles to read CDs. The drive sits here in the case, and so just must pick up interference off the board if the shielding isn't in place. And speaking of the drive, as I said earlier, yes, that will need recapped as well. I have explained it to the Goldfish, and he is more than welcome to send that to me. I will sort it out for him, or I'm sure he can find someone handy local to him that would also do it. To be honest with you, I thought he was sending the whole console. He just said he was sending a CD32, but speaking to him after receiving this, he explained that he just took the board out to save on some postage costs. Fair enough. At least the board itself, that's nice sorted and should be good for many years yet to come. In terms of the capacitors that we took out of here, I thought we would very quickly just test the two 1000 microfarad caps. Because remember the way these were installed backwards from the factory. What sort of condition are they in? And our 1000 microfarad cap is only reading 604.2. V-loss is 2.4%. And an ESR of 0.42 ohms. ESR is probably alright. V-loss, that's probably not too bad, 2.4%. But that capacitance value, well, that's definitely well down. What about the other one? And that one's slightly worse. Capacitance of 596.7 microfarad. The V-loss and the ESR are similar to the other one. So I suppose that does in some ways go to show just how resilient the little console is, because these things were in back to front, they're well out of spec, and according to the Goldfish, this was still working fine. And speaking of him, make sure you do go and check out his YouTube channel. He covers game reviews, heavily focused on Amiga. Always produces a very good video, very entertaining. I will link it in the video's description. But that's going to be it for this one. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed what you've seen. If you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Why not hit subscribe if you haven't done so already? There's still plenty more yet to come here on CRG, and I'll see you next time.